It's a still black night in Lorwyn. You and your caring Kithkin family are drifting off to sleep, but on the periphery of the world of consciousness and dream, something impedes you from slipping into a slumber. You become aware of the ominous silence that inundates your home. It pours down the surrounding heaps and trickles from the silhouettes of the trees. Ignoring the swelling anxiety in your stomach, you close your eyes and return to that frontier dream that you were drawn away from. As your mind strolls to the edge, you hear the sharp flutter of wings. Your stomach falls into a bottomless pit, and you look back to see what pushed you into it. Anticipating a magnificently maleficent beast, you whip your body to the source of the sound, tearing the bedsheets off you like an insect entertaining the futile idea of escaping a spider's web. Once turned over, your eyes snap, unthinkingly, to the thing you thought would put you into an eternal sleep. But upon discerning the source of the noise, the pit in your stomach begins to feel searing magma. That's because you just realised this flowery fuck has laid you 40 winks. The culprit here is Una, Queen of the Fae, the first of commanders that, in my opinion, have art that doesn't properly communicate the power of the card. But don't worry, being a little manlet, I know a thing or two about compensating, which is why I'll be showing you a selection of cards for each commander that will convey the power of these generals better than the art ever could. With her moody morph palette, the only bouquet she belongs in is some black roses for your big titty Gothgia on Valentine's Day. Even though you've been with her for some time, you can't help feel a part in your pants whenever you're with her. You could even call it a carnival. Which brings us to our first card, Carnival of Souls. This 2-mana enchantment from Urza's Destiny gives you a black mana whenever any creature enters the battlefield. Its primary use is going to be utilising the fairy tokens you accumulate from Una's activated ability to feed our queen ad infinitum. With this little bit of flair, it just makes sense to add Una's old chum Painted Servant to the mix, which will increase the consistency as it adds a colour of your choice to each card that isn't in play, meaning you'll get a fairy for whatever your opponent mills. If siphoning your opponent's hopes and dreams, card by card, doesn't fill you with villainous satisfaction, worry not, as your hunger for cardboard sadism will be sated by this meal payoff. Bloodchief Ascension's efficiency is only overshadowed by its malignancy, requiring 3 quest counters to initiate its bloodletting effect, draining each opponent for 2 life anytime a card is put into that player's graveyard from anywhere. It makes the psychological torture of meal somehow even more heinous by mutilating the life totals too. But seeing past the obvious reveals more brutal interactions, such as being paired with Windfall to refill your hand and deal 14 damage if you get a fresh grip. Likewise, a Consuming Aberration on board along with Ascension can deal absurd amounts of damage, as your opponent will mill until they hit a basic land due to Aberration's effect. All I can say from looking at this art is Muzio needs to get out more. Focused on the rightmost third, Muzio's passion for model making and cosplay is screamingly apparent. What we're seeing here is his haul from his monthly pilgrimage outside to his local games workshop, and a work in progress cosplay for the annual Fiora Comic Con in the form of a gauntlet. I don't know about you, but I think the Cauldron cosplay was chosen for the sole purpose of hiding the torrent of sweat streaming down Muzio's face when he inevitably has to encounter and interact with a female in the convention hall. Despite his degenerate Discord mod lifestyle, we know at the core of it all Muzio is a person, and he deserves better. And the first step is reminding Muzio that, in the great words of MLK, judge a card not by its underwhelming art, but by the content of its rules text. And let me tell you, if Muzio's rule text was a Tinder profile, he can make a harem fast and then brainstorm ruin historic. Don't fight me. So, Muzio reads, 3 generic and blue. Tap. Look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the highest mana value among artifacts you control. You may put an artifact card from among them onto the battlefield. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. To start the mechanical mayhem that this general can facilitate, we need some enablers in the form of higher CMC artifacts that can play early in the game. Yes, I know this sounds like more than an oxymoron than a fun stacks deck, but it's perfectly logical and attainable with these cards in mind. Metalwork Colossus. This Steel Leviathan comes in with a whopping 10 power and 10 toughness, in addition to a gobsmacking mana cost of 11. However, this can be easily circumvented as it costs X less, where X is the total converted mana cost of each non-creature artifact you control. I wonder, right, how feasible it is in Commander, the format that uses Mana Rocks Galore, to get this out at a reduced cost? Looks like it's just Magical Christmas Land. Well, let's entertain this fantasy. Along with the aforementioned mana rocks, there are many, normal, average rocks that can synergize strongly with Muzio. The first that comes to mind is Scroll Rack, which you know Muzio will clear in an instant to display his Warhammer models, which allows you to essentially replace any number of cards in your hand with those on the top of your library. In addition to high quality card selection, we can also play high CMC artifacts from our hand onto the top of our deck to cheat it out with Muzio's ability. Magic Mirror. At 6 blue blue blue, this mirror is monumental enough, alongside being magical enough, that Muzio can see his inner Chad self while staring into it. While he indulges your vanity, you can reduce the cost of this artifact by putting instants and sorceries into your graveyard, which reduces the cost of the mirror by 1 generic for each of the cards. Principally not apparent, there are many selection spells that can slot seamlessly into this artifact deck to enhance the effectiveness of Muzio's effect, such as format favourites like Brainstorm, Preordain, or Ponder. Now that we have a trove of trinkets that will allow us to plunder deeper into our library, our next directive is to add payoffs more powerful than how a Discord mill feels when they ban someone who calls their kitten average looking. Possess Portal will help you solidify a lead while you have Muzio on the board, as no player can draw after it resolves. Evading this drawback is done effortlessly with Muzio, as we do not need to play cards from our hand, rather from the top of our library. Logging our opponents out of gaining new resources is not the limit of this card, as it causes each player to sacrifice a permanent unless you discard a card at the end of your turn, which puts even more pressure on your opponents. However, being in the controller means sacrificing the portal itself acts as a safety valve. I have a question for you, the audience. If you're a sentient book attending a college for prestigious welders of reality shaping, incinerating, and death-defying spells, how do you expect not to be taken the piss out of? While sentient, Cody clearly does not have the self-awareness to ask himself this question, and just ignorantly chose to make the university experience that of social ostracization and agony. If I wasn't vexed enough thinking about that lack of foresight this second grade scrapbook has, the idea of how they would talk has sent me over the edge. Due to his lack of larynx, lips, or any kind of organ designed for speech, I'm assuming that this is somehow granted through the crusty pages that compose his body, meaning that they're going to have an infuriating lisp, along with the sound of putting a card in the fan if you decide to speak too quickly or too loud. Now that I've given you enough ammunition to cyberbully Cody until Trump gets re-elected, let's move on to the only likable characteristic of this general, which is their rule text. Cody reads, "You can't cast permanent spells. 4 of any colour and tap. Add Wooburg to your mana pool. When you cast your next spell this turn, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile an instant sorcery card with lesser mana value. Until end of turn, you may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Put each other card exiled this way on the bottom of your library in a random order." Judging a book by its cover just gained a new meaning for me, especially since this book essentially gives your spells cascade. In order to reap the highest rewards from this activated ability, we need to fulfill 2 criteria. Firstly, we want big spells to maximize the number of spells we can cast off the trigger. And secondly, to permit us to cast these spells, we need ways to avoid playing them how they were intended, on the term that corresponds with their mana cost. As To Kill a Mockingbird is to British secondary school English classes, Fist of Suns is to 5 colour EDH decks. At 3 mana, this Infinity Gauntlet Light can't warp the fabric of space and time, but can warp Magic's mana system by giving you the option to pay Wooburg instead of the mana cost spells you cast. Whereas visually, because of the inclusion of 5 mana symbols, the card doesn't seem to reduce the cost of spells by a just full margin. In application, it will allow you to play cards like Expropriate or Time Stretch for half the mana. Moreover, Cody's ability to put a 4 mana of any colour into Wooburg means there will be less stress on your mana base, as you have access to this effect from the command zone. Now we established the method we're going to use to cast our supersized spells, we need spells whose caliber match their size. The Ultimatum cycle has many gems that we can utilise. One in mind is Ruinous Ultimatum, a 7 mana asymmetrical wrath that hits all non-land permanents your opponent's controls. As we run a spell-sling archetype, this card can help us claw back into the game in the face of adversity, as we all know Commander is a format dominated by permanents. By the same token, as the majority of decks are permanent based, a well-timed Ruinous Ultimatum can be backbreaking and ruin many game plans. Most seasoned sorcerers know that even a spell-slinger deck needs an army in a can. Your draw just ain't hitting right. Mascot Exhibition from Cody's own set can provide this. For 7 mana any colour, it gives a menagerie of tokens that can be used to chump block or maybe even swing out if you get to resolve a Ruinous Ultimatum or Soul Scar. One of the downsides of spell-based EDH decks is the lack of value. By their nature, instant sorceries can only be used once, arguably by design to limit grand use effects such as Enter the Infinite. Mnemonic Deluge allows you to copy any instant sorcery in your graveyard 3 times, allowing you to triplicate value from your big spells. Late game, this can even be a win con, if you target cards such as Rise from the Tides, making a zombie token for each instant sorcery in your graveyard, turning your board into a horde in an instant. Another way to get the mileage of 4 mana in this deck is using the acute effect of Spellweaver Volute, an aura that attaches to an instant at any graveyard and allows you to play said instant whenever you play a sorcery. This allows us to get a second casting out of our instants and cheat their costs in the cases of Nexus of Fate and Dig Through Time.